Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's worth explaining exactly what Creator Fund is. We did a bit of a bio right at the beginning of the show, but yeah, worth an intro from you, and we can jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good to be here. So Creator Fund is based on the belief that European universities attract the world's top talent across all the verticals that matter. Like if you're in China, in India, America, France, and you want to innovate in AI, robotics, quantum, materials, biotech, you come to a European university. And the question is like, how do we harness that talent to build this continent's next generation of massive technology businesses? So I started the firm back in 2019. I'd seen a similar model in America, seen how many of the biggest technology companies in the world came out of American campuses. Started really small in London, Oxford, and Cambridge. And over the last 6 years, we've scaled to 30 universities in 10 countries. We're deep inside the laboratories where the most interesting things are happening. And we write first checks into PhDs, help them get businesses off the ground across deep tech categories.
First question off the bat is about the amount of people starting companies. I've seen a few tweets about, the amount of companies that are coming out of like a Stanford or a lot of, the kind of semi-technical and technical US universities. Do you find the volume of businesses being started out of European universities less, or is that just not a thing?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty comparable. I'd say the big difference between Europe and America is in America, you have undergrads that look like Mark Zuckerberg building marketplaces, social networks. We don't have that in Europe. I think there's not that same culture of it happening at the undergrad MBA level. But PhD company creation in Europe is as strong, if not stronger, than what you see in the US. I think it breaks down into two categories. You've got kind of the major hubs, like you cannot walk down a street in Cambridge without bumping into a founder starting something. Same in Zurich, same in Munich. And then what we're really good at Europe is places that don't necessarily have the same history of startup creation, but they're really good in one field. So Glasgow, one of our best companies is a chemistry company there because one of the world's best chemistry labs is in Glasgow. We've backed an unbelievable fertility company that came out of the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen. Hard word to pronounce, actually. It's one of those German umlauts. But again, it's like a center of fertility, world-leading fertility university globally. So there's a lot, both specialist and in hubs. I just think it tends to skew more deep tech.
Yeah, we've talked to, we had Jeff Morris Jr., general partner at Chapter One, on a few weeks ago, and we were talking about consensus and how non-consensus investments is dead. Everyone's kind of following. You've got the kind of divergence between smaller solo GPs and then the larger, the largest VC firms raising billions and billions and more, and you've got this kind of messy middle. Where do you feel that you guys are doing something very different, because it is naturally going to be non-consensus because
Sure.
You're literally putting in first check. Do you feel that is like the major kind of differentiator of Creator Fund? Where do you see the kind of the delta between you and like another, fund of the same size?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that synopsis, right? Like, I think the emerging manager part of the European ecosystem is really interesting right now. And you've got people who are doing very specialist stuff, bringing pretty unique value add to their companies and looking for something very different. I mean, I like the phrase, I don't want to be in the messy middle, but I agree. It's kind of like at the smaller end, it's more specialist. And, we've got a very, very clear thesis. Like, Europe's PhDs often come with 3-4 years of commercial experience. They've mastered a technical field. They are where huge businesses are going to be built. And they've got that fusion of technical experience to tackle a massive world problem with understanding something from industry, and they bring that together. And we want to be the absolute #1 fund for them. So, we're on the bigger side of small, I'd say. We've got about 80 million pounds under management. We've been going for about 6 years. We've backed 60 companies. We're really proud of our portfolio, but we want to be absolute specialists in what we do. And I also think at the smaller end, you're just scrappier, you're hungrier. I mean, we fight really hard. Like, when we learn something interesting is happening at the Technical University of Copenhagen, we're on a plane there the next day. And I think that also comes from being at the smaller part, specialist part of the market.
I can now hear, by the way. I've been
perfect.
given the gift of audio.
It's fine. Shut up. I'll ask the next question.
Luke's been on a roll.
This needs to be a great question, right? Because I was listening to your previous interview. This is a question that's been stored up over two interviews.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, I've been released from my vow of silence.
This better be a good one.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, like, the messy middle and the you've got the mega funds on one end, and we have this like hyper specialized sort of side on the other. You know, maybe the mega funds are deploying a lot of capital over a breadth of individuals, and then you have the opposite end, which is hyper specialized investments in what you describe right now, right? These PhDs, they have world-renowned talent in that one niche that they work in. You just mentioned then, like, if something's popping off in Copenhagen, you guys are on a plane there immediately. How does this sourcing technique work at that end, right? Because I'm sure, A16Z probably get a load of inbound, right?
Sure.
But you guys are out in the field.
Yeah. So that would be the kind of core thing to say about the European university landscape. It's very dispersed, right? So, I gave you the example earlier of like chemistry in Glasgow. There are hubs like that right across this continent of really interesting things happening. Neuroscience-based AI in Eindhoven. And so the only way to find those deals right across Europe is to kind of have a decentralized model. So what we have at Creator Fund is we have 45 PhDs who are members of our team. We spend 3 months over the summer recruiting them. We do it in a really quantitative way. We track where are papers being published, where are patents being filed. Anyone can tell you the kind of best AI professor who's going to be the kind of one in their 30s that's going to be the best in 5 years, and they're seeing really interesting citation growth. Where were companies last year that we weren't there or we want to double down in? And so we map out Europe and say, look, these are the 30 universities, these are the 30 programs, these are the 30 professors that we want proximity to. And then we go out and recruit PhDs on those programs to join our fund. They share in the carried interest of the fund. They get an incentive every time we do a deal that they source. We put them through a 20-part VC training program. The idea being, you might be a really smart PhD in AI, but you want to learn how to put together a cap table, negotiate legals. How do you start a company yourself? And we think this program now is kind of Europe's most powerful platform for learning how to turn your PhD into a business. So we just wrote signed a term sheet last Friday. It's the fourth one of our students that's been through the program. They've worked with us for 2-3 years, and then they're building a business off the back of Creator Fund. And so we see that as a massive multiplier of also generating our own deal flow through these really smart students. They're also on the ground and source stuff. It's also why people want to, take our money. I mentioned the fertility deal earlier. Really top tier team, unbelievable PhD out of Francis Crick. Top professor in Germany, biotech management consultant. You have to win that kind of deal. But when we're showing up, we're bringing 3-4 of our PhDs that are literally doing PhDs in the exact field that the company's pursuing. So we're having a better conversation. We're understanding what they're doing. And often people are recruiting directly from our students for talent too. So that kind of decentralized model is how we find stuff. It's not inbound driven. It's very much this kind of people embedded inside the laboratories that matter across the continent.
That's so clever. I love that. I wanted to ask where the kind of main focus is. Obviously you have such a breadth of kind of touch points between all the universities. Is it quite a wide breadth of companies being started, or is there kind of one natural theme that you guys are really just seeing all the time?
So we invest across 5 sectors. So we invest in biotech, materials, physics, AI, and I'd say it's fairly evenly distributed right now across AI and robotics in terms of what we see top PhDs coming out of ETH Zurich, Technical University of Munich, and Cambridge pursuing. But there's been a bit of a correction in biotech over the last year or so. The biotech market's a bit harder, so we're seeing kind of less there. But I'd say that those 5 sectors are pretty representative of where interesting stuff is coming out of European universities. It's pretty specialized. So, we see a lot of robotics out of ETH. We see more biotech out of somewhere like Karolinska in Stockholm. But, it's fairly well distributed across those, with some cyclical impact as things like the biotech industry reacts to it being a tougher public market environment for those companies.
Nice. That's awesome. And talk to me about Loki, about the exit that you guys had recently. Obviously, a massive I think that was your first, is that right? It was the first exit of the fund?
We had a second exit.
Second exit, okay.
It was a second exit, but it was the exit that essentially returned our first fund. I mean, it's a great story. I mean, an unbelievable founder. He's very shy, so I'm gonna get an angry text from him tonight when I name drop him. The founder was called Jack Davis, and we discovered his computer science thesis on LinkedIn. And essentially what his thesis was he had neural rendered a tennis match between Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer. And essentially, when you watch it on the BBC, you can see it from one angle. He'd rendered it so you could experience it from any angle. And 3 of my PhDs in related fields were like, you've got to meet this guy. What he's managed to achieve, it's a 6-second video, right? So it's hard. He's brilliant, but it's hard immediately in a 6-second video to understand is it really brilliant or quite brilliant. And they were like, you've got to meet this guy. And so we met Jack, and I'm sure he was a bit like, why are these people cold reaching out to me on LinkedIn? Came into the office, and there was just some like cold, steely nerve to him, right? Like understated guy, very humble, but just had that grit of like, okay, this guy is technically impressive. He had a background in finance before, so it's pretty commercial. And we wrote a first check into him pretty much off the basis of that 6-second video and getting to know him. We then brought in a co-founder for him because we've got a really extensive talent network. He essentially, the business was kind of gaming sector focused. We brought in this amazing guy from the gaming industry, also a PhD in Oxford, a guy called Eugene Yee. He came in as CEO. We match made them. And they then executed. They found a really smart niche, which was gaming companies have loads of 3D assets. So if you're trying to build a video game of Paris, you probably have like 80 Eiffel Towers from different time periods, night, day. If it's an apocalyptic, Eiffel Tower in a state of collapse. And they need to be searched and tagged. So if you're a game building games, you can quickly find the right asset in the right moment and build it. So they just executed well. They sold them to right customers. And there was a really good acquisition offer on the table from one of their core customers, Epic Games, and they sold, and it was a very meaningful impact for both founders. It's actually the founder Jack, when we did the deal, it was his first time seeing a term sheet. So I said, look, we'll go for an Italian meal. So I took him to we didn't have much money in those days, like crappy pizza restaurant in South Kensington, I think. And we had a margarita together. And at the end of the deal, he signed the term sheet. And I think it had some marinara sauce on the pizza. And then 4 years later, when now he's much wealthier than me, he took me back to the restaurant and he took me for pizza at the same restaurant to celebrate the exit. And it was quite a nice moment of going like full journey of this brilliant founder that we found from the thesis those years ago and back to the same restaurant. We're just still serving the same pizza to celebrate the win. And they're now very happy at Epic.
That is such a sick story.
Yeah, what a cool story. I love that. Do you find a lot of people who don't really start, like they're not really thinking about starting a company? A lot of PhD students, they're so deep into the academia, and you kind of open this world of commerciality of their skills, right? Of their brain and the ability to kind of build a company that they didn't even realize that they could build. How was that process of kind of convincing someone like uber smart to say, oh, you can actually go and start a business and like make life-changing money or whatever you want to go and do?
Yeah, I'd say you can't go from 0 to 100 in our experience. So we've been unsuccessful when we found people who have never thought of starting a company.
Yeah.
No interest in doing so. And we kind of pushed them and said, you should start something. You got really interesting technology. You've got to be 60, 70% of the way there. Because I think, what we see in PhD founders in Europe right now, we call them scientific founders, is they're very commercial. Like a lot of these people like Jack, like Eugene, they're coming out of industry, they're coming with commercial experience, and then they're fusing the technical. It's dangerous to invest if literally someone doesn't have a commercial bone in their body and you're kind of pushing them to do this. We're really interested in, are you kind of 60% of the way there? You've built something, it's commercial, but you just don't know where to start, or like how much do you raise, or what do you do in the first 18 months, or how do you put together a cap table, or who do you hire, or how do you simplify your pitch so people can understand what you're doing? We're really focused on you're 60% of the way there, let's get you to 100% of the way there. And often I think like a lot of that is just like reframing. I think we've got an unhealthy history in Europe with university spin-outs over the decades where it's like, let's bring in external management. Let's take this brilliant PhD that's like, found a new way to do gene sequencing and done all the work, and then bring in like a 65-year-old from industry to run it. Like that's a really unhelpful mentality. What we really want is like, how do you skill up that PhD to run the business and realize they can be CEO? And quite a lot of the work we're doing is like, they want to start the business. You just need to help them appreciate they should be the leader of this. They can be the leader of this. We're a fund that can work with them to do it. And sometimes it's a confidence thing or a understanding what it looks like to be a founder thing of this can be me, and I might hire a head of sales or whoever it might be to complement me.
Nice. Love it.
So cool.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
I loved it, guys. Huge fan for the show. It's really cool what you're doing, and real pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Have a great afternoon.
You too, dude.